So, where do you go from here, Star Trek? Today on Trekland, Tuesdays Live number 387. Whoa, yes. And I got the proof. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. And yes, Trekland Treks, your own customized away mission here in Greater SoCal to actual Star Trek film location sites. With me planning and concierging you a half-day trip, a 6-hour trip, your own customized away mission. Yes, here in the home of Trekland HQ. Are you ready? Are you ready for another Tuesday of some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in things Star Trek? If you're coming to us later, not live, maybe you can join us live sometime here on Tuesday afternoons at 1-ish Pacific, 4-ish Eastern, and 9-ish UK time, 10-ish Central Europe. As Will Rogers, to paraphrase him, once said, I never got far enough in arithmetic to figure out what the other time zone start times are. But I know we have them from Australia and other countries too. So, on one hand, how you feeling? Does it feel like the Section 31, has the Section 31 wave passed by? Are you still excited about it? Are you still bewildered by it? Do you still are you still talking about it in your circles and your friends? Or have you gone back to, I don't know, what we might call the great body of Star Trek, the legacy canon? And guys, gals, peeps, to now, legacy canon now includes Discovery and Lower Decks and Picard, and I hope not Prodigy. I'll say Lower Decks as is, unless they tweak it. But I am told by no less than Aaron Welke and the Hagemans that Netflix makes weird decisions. And I was watching with Cadet Alice, her favorite show, Octonauts, and apparently they made the first 2 seasons in 2015 and came back, tweaked the format, and came back 7 years later. So never say never. That's just strange for us. We're used to movies being the great comeback of a lost series. But, it's a changing world. In case you didn't realize, you like that little second opinion move? In case you didn't realize, this media landscape keeps evolving, right? Now, speaking of second opinion, I hope you all, watched it. I hope you saw my second opinion for Section 31's movie. And I say they're not so much a review as a reaction. Back during the Life Support Live days with Dr. Ali, we would do live watch-alongs and do reactions. I know that's bread and butter for so many places. Sometimes the screening is part of the image. Sometimes it's everybody's watching at home and everybody's just commenting on a stream. I love doing that, and I'd love doing that. I'd love to do that live in person on stage, and everybody just kind of MST3King along. But that, it always happens. So this is kind of the next best thing. A second opinion. You get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Let all the other hot takes and quick takes zoom at you the minute somebody can hit their key when they're allowed to by the studio. 6 a.m. Thursdays. But I'm just saying that there's a whole catalog of second opinions there for the last 2 or 3 years. And if you haven't seen it and you're enjoying watching, rewatch, just as much as you pull out your old TNG companion to watch TNG reruns and episodes, original episodes, I'd appreciate it. And love the comments when you're rewatching a legacy show from the last 3 or 4 years that was made and released in the last 3 or 4 years, to go and check out my second. I don't go all the way back through the beginnings of Discovery or Picard, but we come in midstream on all of these. I think I may have started with Picard. Anyway, that's out there. And that's something people are doing. They're going to be jumping in. We don't have any new. There's no new, strange new. Did they have a date in that new trailer? Now I've gone blank. Somebody will tell me. But we know it's not coming for another couple of months or so. And then after it runs its 10-episode course, then what for the rest of the year? Academy looks like it's not starting now until 2026. It was going to be 2025 all along, amazingly, back in 2022, 2023. And then the strike, even 2 years later, looks like it's going to bump it into 2026. And hopefully by that time, we'll have some, wind will have some direction blowing through that tells us not only what the powers that be at Paramount are going to do about Star Trek, but what the industry's doing. I've been harping on this for months now. There's so many variables at play. But you know what? We're just fans. We're just gonna trek regardless. A fan in the 70s just trekked regardless. They got activist, just like people got activist now about Lower Decks, about Prodigy, about Legacy. So people will be activists. Is activism part of your thing? Do you love signing petitions, or do you love actually putting in money to go, buy a banner for the Prodigy renewal? What are you going to do with your time in between now and the next Fresh Trek? 'Cause it's there. Are you germinating on the Trek that sped by in peak Trek? I mean, when we were literally having Fresh Trek every week, and even overlapping some weeks when seasons would come and go, series. Picard would overlap Strange New Worlds, or Lower Decks would overlap Strange. You know what I mean? How are you keeping up? Are you building models? Are you working on CG? Do you cosplay? Do you look at all the things you can control yourself and express your love of Trek and your favorite Treks? Just don't tell me you've taken out your toxic tuber card and you're going to start, we're going to try to restart the era of the most extreme podcasts and YouTubers. No one does an extreme. Do you notice that? Did we ever have toxic podcasts, or were they always YouTubers? Because what's the glory of bashing something if you can't, even if your stupid projected face is up there? Nobody messes. This just dawned on me. Nobody messes with doing an audio hate fest on Trek. I wonder if that's true of the other, franchises and genres too. That's funny. If you know of one, let me know. But it just struck me. I think the sting and the arrogance and the ego is in being on, even if you're not showing your face, which is such a chicken shit thing to do. If you're going to be honest with people, get up here and do your face, right? You don't have to be live, even if you're edited. And if you're edited, good God, what's the point? Well, whether you yourself are considering starting some kind of a media show online, or you just enjoy watching them, there's plenty out there. There's plenty. I've got plenty in my catalog, much less hopping around to some of the other ones. And there's so many good ones. And you know what? There's so many mom and pops out there too that are cute to watch. If you have friends who are doing theirs, power to you. As long as everybody's responsible and civil. It's like the era of zine fandom, when everybody made a zine or everybody had a club. Now everybody has a podcast and a live stream. And that is cool. That's cool. That's how you get your geek flag to fly. Then power to you. But it's going to be an interesting year. And we're just now, Section 31 was the thing, yay or nay, we had to look forward to, and it's done. And now we've got a while until Strange New. And a lot of that is anyone's, what is it? Omission and commission. Nobody planned this. This is the result of the strikes and the Paramount sale and delays and just everything being wobbly in the market in media. And then in case you hadn't noticed, things are a little wonky outside in the real world too. God, it just, if Trump gets his tariffs on Canadian products, does that mean that the streamers in America have to pay more for Toronto Treks? Oh, I don't know. That's too bizarre to even think about. I left out one thing though. Aside from Strange New, did you see Alex Kurtzman calling it strange? He did me one better. So ha ha ha. Strange New and Academy, and then whether either animated show has some kind of life to come in a year or 5. There's also Tawny Newsom's comedy. I got to chat with her just a little bit at San Francisco. She remembered me far. We haven't had a chance to cross paths much on any project or even an interview so far. But she always remembers who I am, which is nice. Oh, Larry, the writer. Oh, nice to meet you again. But they've been talking about her comedy. It's the weirdest damn thing. It's evolving. That's fine. The sitcom that she's co-writing, it's evolving in its format, which we barely know anything about anyway. But what's amazing to me about all of this is that it's so anti the promotional playbook. Everybody's tight-lipped and mum about everything Star Trek until it's ready to be announced. And then we have this carefully worded promotion calendar. You know, we're going to say this here, we're going to say this here, we're going to save this little batch of headlines for Comic-Con, or this little batch of headlines for Star Trek Day, New York Comic-Con, no allied affiliations with, say, Trek Vegas. So the big thing goes for numbers. So yeah, New York Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. No franchised events, no creations, Vegas or otherwise. Mission Pop was a people talk about people who were never on the same page, and then you complicate it with the pandemic. The only licensed event, quote unquote, the studio has a handle on and can, dictate what's going to happen, is the cruise. And that's coming up. Boy, howdy, we have just about 2.5 weeks to go till we debark. And I'm so thrilled to be on this year as a guest. And I'm thrilled to be working with a lot of old friends and some of the newer folks from some of the newer shows I haven't got to see. They all hang out in Toronto when they're not off running around doing something. But I'm just very curious. I don't know if we're going to have sprinkled in this year of rare new Trek, if we're going to get more news on Tawny's comedy and Justin Simeon. I keep leaving him out. Oh yeah, that. And Tawny, at least I guess probably for season 2 also, both seasons now, is in the writer's room for Academy. So they're keeping her busy. I just keep saying this over and over. I told her this. If there was any one person right now that I wanted to entrust with experimenting with a Star Trek sitcom, it would be her. Now, unless you're just absolutely aghast at the idea of a live action sitcom, if you're over that, thanks to Lower Decks, thanks to some of the other moments we've seen stretching the envelope on Strange New, right, with the crossover, with the musical, I feel like people are in a little bit better mindset for these things. You see the possibilities. My God, we've had this debate for 50 years about whether the original series evolved, and it did, from its square jaw earlier days, if space military with scientists, to a little more relaxed and a little more short sleeves and a little more good humored. And we chalk that up to the late, great Gene Coon, who never got to see any attention for any of this. Basically, he died in 1973. Huge smoker, huge lung cancer death. There's this debate for ages about whether he and Gene clashed over Gene Coon was bringing too much humor to Star Trek, which has been debunked by none other than the woman who was there in the room, Gene's assistant, Andrea Kindred, who we've been privileged to have on Trek Files and Portal 47 and live on stage at San Francisco and Vegas. And if you ever get a chance coming up, she's wanting to get back over to the States. She's been an expat in Australia for decades. Her book is amazing because she has much more to talk to the world about than working on Star Trek Desilu in the 60s and with Gene Coon. She was basically in the civil rights circle in LA in the 60s. And as she would say, she knew Malcolm, Martin, and Medgar, which is amazing. And her family history is incredible. But my point is, she was there with Gene and said that wasn't. Gene was exhausted. Her Gene was exhausted by then. And Star Trek was taking it out of everybody. Gene Bird, as she calls Gene Roddenberry, and Bob Justman. They were all exhausted. Very few people made it through the end of the 3rd season. If they had, if they'd hit it big time with NBC, hopefully they would have got promoted up and bumped up and brought in underlings, because they were all killing themselves working those hours to try to create a whole new paradigm of entertainment. And, the efforts paid off. I didn't know how many of them ever saw anything aside maybe a couple of free trips to conventions at that in the 70s. My point here is that DNA of comedy was really, we all know that. We saw Tribbles. We saw Piece of the Action. We know what comedy can be. Now, if you're going to live in a comedy format, that may take some doing. Although we saw it with Lower Decks, but did our animation filter allow that? I don't know. I'm just saying that we won't have a completed show this coming year, but we'll be watching all the news around that unwind and reveal. And it's already a weird thing to even be having this conversation about talking about something happening that is unformed. That strict Paramount promotional playbook hates it when anything leaks, something that's not on the schedule. They want the playbook to be followed, and they don't like it when somebody gets off page, either somebody in the show or a reporter or an interviewer. They like having everything nice and controlled. And there's a point to that. But there's also a point when I think sometimes they may not know the audience. The same way some conventions don't think it's important to release guests ahead of time. And then they wonder why they don't have advanced sales. That happens. But that's a thing. That's a thing we're going to be, even though it's not fresh, completed Trek, we're going to be watching for the comedy news unrolling. And I hope it keeps unrolling. But, that's your headlines. And then, of course, a lot of you are looking forward to, a lot of us are all looking forward to the conventions through the year. Got WonderCon and no more regional creations until the fall, until Vegas, and then in the fall. Chicago, New York area. I love to say New Jersey, but it's greater New York. No offense, Jersey. It's like the whole New York Giants, Jersey Giants thing. I get it, but we're just dealing with geography and people. But there's big shows, and New York Comic Con, and San Diego Comic Con, and a lot of the Comic Cons we've said. And yes, Europe has another destination Trek happening, and all of your Comic Cons too, in the UK and in the continent. Wherever you are, there's regional and smaller cons too, and there's suddenly a lot more Trek people at all stages of the billing order and price range that are turning up at cons. And it's if nothing else, this last boost of Trek, 5 series on at one time, has given a lot of folks a chance to Trek people, or if you're an actor who has Trek in your resume, and that's how another slice of fandom knows you, then there's another chance to get someone at one of your local and regional cons. So we have our personal fandom, and of course we have our clubs and our meetups, and it's amazing. And I said this 2 weeks before the pandemic lockdowns hit in early March. What was that? For 5 years, I had been doing Portal 47 by freeconferencecall.com, and I knew the power of virtual. I think 98% of the world had no clue what Zooming was and virtual was. Only people in business and coaching knew what this was. It was a good way to unite people around a huge geographic area without the travel and expense and the overhead. And the tech was nascent. It was new. It was about to be scaled up hugely as far as the servers and capacity. But ever since then, and ever since now with the rest of the world, we know this is virtual. So are you leaning into, and I'm not talking about podcasting, I'm talking about with your peeps. Are you leaning into your local clubs or your meetup group, whatever you call your bunch? Do you get together? Do you just have a hangout? And people get together like that. There's a lot of the big national groups that aren't profit-minded. A Trek Family is one that was running the fund, I think it's still going, for Trek folks who are put out by the fires, burned out or whatever. That's Trek Family. But there's so many opportunities to have community this year, because that's what we're going to have. We're going to have 10 hours of Strange New, and maybe that's it, basically, for the year, as far as more fresh Trek. And everybody gets it. We got spoiled there. We had 12 years of Trek Oasis with a Kelvin movie every once in a while to remind you what Trek is, or remind the bookkeepers and the suits what it was. And we had the original 10 years of just fighting for Trek to exist and vindicate its success. So we're not there yet. I think no one is ever going to make the stupid mistake of letting Trek totally go stagnant. Maybe there'll be moments where timings didn't work out, contracts, corporates, God forbid, something else like a pandemic. But I don't think we'll ever have 12 years of no episodic small-scale Trek again, much less 10. But it's going to be a thin year. I'm just curious what you're doing to enjoy that. There's nothing at all like just sitting down with you by your lonesome, or your significant other, or your kids, your best friend, comes down, and just doing your own binge watch. Just doing your own. And a lot of people, which is talking to Steve Fothery and Taylor at San Francisco, a lot of people are taking that experience of introducing Trek. I've had Tuesdays Live when we've talked about how are you evangelizing Trek. Maybe you try to drag more folks in the way the two of them are doing with their, and make something of it and record it for posterity or posterior, experiencing someone else, documenting someone's exposure for the first time to Star Trek. I envy people who are doing that. Think how exciting that is. I never thought of this concept until I was listening to, way back in grad school, talking to a theater professor who was talking about having to see another production somewhere else of a Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. Okay, sitting in the audience, and he's critiquing the blocking, he's critiquing the thematic choices, he's critiquing the motif. Oh, they've set Romeo and Juliet in Roman times. They've set it in Civil War times. They've set it in pre-World War I France, for the artistic and the design aesthetic, to try to have another filter. They've said it some other time, and he's all into his head about the lighting and the stage design and the blocking and some of the interpretations. And all of a sudden he realizes this little girl with her parents is sitting in the row in front of him. And at the end, he hears the little girl say, "Oh no, they're going to kill themselves too." And it totally blew him out of it. He was like, oh my God, she's seeing Romeo and Juliet for the first time, and it's all new to her. And ever since I heard that expressed that way, it is an envy. As much as you love something and you know it up inside and down ways, and you love it so much, that's why. And you can even go quote verse in scripture or win your trivia, whatever. But the glory of fresh Trek for the first time, even if it's 5 or 30 or 60 years old, just what an enviable thing to do with folks. So I don't know, are you hanging out with newbies? Are you evangelizing? Because there's going to be plenty of time. There's going to be plenty of time. Now, because, we've gone from peak TV to peak pod. I wanted to say that. There may be news also. Reacting to news is a national hobby for Trek folks, world hobby. There may be news coming out of the cruise news. WonderCon is on the horizon in March. I don't think there's a studio presence at WonderCon. It's San Diego Comic-Con's little brother in Anaheim. But some of these, that's your next few. And then, of course, First Contact Day is coming in April. I don't know. Does the studio use First Contact Day much for announcements anymore? I don't think so, especially when there's not many to be making. I don't know. But here's something. It is an anniversary year we're celebrating. This is Voyager's 30th anniversary. And here's a question. Maybe this should have been a separate show. What do you think is Voyager's greatest legacy as a series? And there's 1 or 2 or 3 obvious answers. Characters, for sure. But are there any general themes, especially for you big Voyager fans, but even if you're not Voyager adjacent, what do you think is a big legacy now that we've had enough hindsight to think about it? The biggest legacies of Voyager. For years, I didn't, aside from having Janeway as a lead, having a female lead, and initiating now Seven's story, I saw the sausage being made. I didn't have a lot to say about Voyager. I'm getting there, though, but I know plenty of folks do. What do you think is Voyager's, as a series, as a whole's, greatest legacy? Okay, that's the kind of example that we can talk about this year, right? To fill up the time. I'm not trying to sound desperate. It's just that this is a slow news week. The din from Section 31 is starting to die down, but don't let me do it. If you're still active, yay or nay, or in the middle of the meh, like the Empress, keep at it. Don't let me alter that. One thing I'm going to be doing, and I'll do it anytime I'm live with folks, is I'm going to be scouting for trends and tips, starting with the crews, from the fans and the actors backstage. Many of those actors, half dozen, in active shows right now. The Strange folks, at least. Okay, maybe 2, 3. Or writers on new shows. Looking at you, Academy. I'm going to be that, but also the fans. What are the trends? We're talking about it here today, but we have this year. And speaking of trends and anniversaries and fans and all of that, something that went totally unheralded because it fell at a funny time, but I'm going to say it here. Happy 7th anniversary to the Trek Files. Yes, because the Trek Files turned 7. The first episode was January 23rd, 2018. It's a year younger than Tuesdays Live. Came about totally different developmental paths and all of that, but I just want to say that was a big oops. That's a big oops. In fact, in 8 weeks, we'll have our 300th episode of the Trek Files. And something that went under promoted, and I'm just going to say it now ahead of the end stream. Something you can do is, pick out your favorite podcasts and enjoy the community around them, which until now was really hard to do with the Trek Files. But I'm here to tell you that, number one, we have a Discord channel for the Trek Files. It's on the Roddenberry site. It's a Roddenberry podcast. And number two, you have to be part of the Roddenberry Patreon to be able to come and enjoy the channel. And also the new live hour, Trekophiles Tonight, that I'm doing to start off with, doing it at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern on every other Monday, bi-weekly Mondays at 4 o'clock. Yesterday was kind of our unheralded soft launch, but I still had 8 or so people because Discord has an internal alert system. And people go, oh, there's something live. What is that? And there's lots of people on the Roddenberry Discord, or Discord in general, the Roddenberry server. So that's the thing. You have to be in the Roddenberry. Now, the good news is you can be in the Roddenberry Patreon for just $1 a month, or you can go up from there. But it only takes $1 a month to be on the Roddenberry Patreon. And then you've got access to all their shows and all their audiences and all their stuff like that. The add-ons to the podcasts are all still free, etc. But this is the way you can support that and the fan base and support John and the entire team that way. And yes, I've been so frustrated with not having a community space beyond Facebook, which doesn't really encourage anything. I knew we have 1,500 or something Trek Files. I'm always shocked when I meet one. When I meet a Trekophile spelled with F at a con. And so finally, we've got the Memory Alpha page that allows access to all the seasons easily and the guests and the document. And now we have a community space there with a live magnet show every 2 weeks, 4 p.m. Pacific, Mondays. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. But I'm encouraging everybody to jump in and do that, and not to confuse things with my own Patreon. All right. Well, I feel like I've drifted into the end credits anyway. I can't wait to go back and see what everybody is saying in the live chat here. But you know what? Maybe you're not in the live chat. Maybe you're watching us later. And you can do just as well leaving a comment below when you come to us on YouTube. And make sure you've subscribed on YouTube as well, because that's basically the home channel of choice now in the modern world. So I'm going to call it here for those of you, for the archived version that you're so privileged to now be watching. Yes, I'm glad you're here. Please try to join us live on a Tuesday at 1 or so Pacific, 4 or so Eastern, and around the world. That's why we do it then. And as you're doing that, remember that you too can take a Trekland Trek. Get a hold of me at my website, LarryNemecek.com, or Trekland Treks. It's 4 stops in the day. I have the menu. We've got the call sheets. You get all kinds of info about the shooting. A lot more at Vasquez Rocks in the Gorn. 4 stops in a day, 6 hours, fast food lunch. You pick the day. We work it out in advance. Hopefully no surprises. And I'm thrilled to wrangle all your cosplay and props and stuffed animals or whatever it is you've got with you. That's all. That's Trekland Treks. But, you know, I really am amiss if I don't, of course, thank all of our Patreon folks. This is my Patreon, the TTL. You're helping me here with, well, paying for the restream costs, if nothing else, and expanding this and getting the word out. So, yes, thank you once again to our TTLers. Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Calburn Gunnjonson, Lawrence Todd, Justin Weir, Mitch Keith, Andrew Jasimski, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. And our live wires, the next tier up in our simple Patreon. But thank you also to Jesse at Crusher Convo, Greg Wickstrom, Rob McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Gary Williams, James Durovich, Dave Gregory, Dan Leckie, and Casey Shafsky. That is our TTLers and our live wires. What's the difference? What's the deal? Well, my Patreon, patreon.com/Trekland Live is just $5 and $10 a month. You can do more for the shout out. And I keep saying this every week. Access to our early Portal 47 backstage creatives, amazing guest nights from early years of the Portal with their audio, with their picture, and with their own personal picture sharing. It's amazing stuff. Patreon.com/Trekland Live for my Patreon. You can head to the Roddenberry Patreon, the Mission Log Patreon, $1 a month, and you can join the Trek Files Patreon audience and jump in on our live. That $1 a month, of course, also gets you to all the other Roddenberry shows and their audiences and their live events every week, because there's a lot of them. I mentioned the Trek Files. Did I mention the Trek Files? The new one is up today, episode 2 of season 13. And none other than, well, he felt the need to come out and say this. We've got our executive producer, Rod Roddenberry, with us, and the originator of the idea for the Trek Files. Rod wanted to come on with the document that his dad wrote to push back against the format that Paramount, not using Gene, came up with for a Next Generation series. And it might have been something. There's some wincy, moments, especially talking about the female characters. But it didn't have a lot of vision. It was very small. And Gene argued for big and not small. And he touches on the touchstones. And in this time of continued eternal debate about what Star Trek is and isn't, Rod felt like it was good to get out his dad's own words from 1986 at another pivotal time in the franchise's history and talk. That's this week's Trek Files. It's a little bit of a long one, too. Hope you're not angry. You want to make sure and catch it. It's out now at thetrekfiles.com is our new home on Memory Alpha. But wherever you get your podcasts, you can get the document there, but you can get the audio anywhere. This week, you want to get the document. It's like 4 or 5 pages. Gene writing to the head of Paramount TV. It's pretty good. For one thing, I don't think you can make a new Star Trek without my involvement. Not just comment after the fact, but involvement from square one. But it gets good from there. It gets even better from there. Yeah. Gang, that's going to be it. If you're watching us on YouTube later, it's Larry Nemecek on all the channels, on Twitter, and it's Blue Sky, and YouTube. It's Larry's Trekland on Facebook. Instagram, what's happening? Instagram isn't quite as cute and pretty as it used to be. We'll see what happens. For now, I'm leaning on Blue Sky. And apparently, more of a presence on Discord. But you really want to jump into us with portal47.net. It is your backstage guide to more in-depth Trek with Dr. Trek. It's like a mini-con all year long. Hey, that is going to do it for now. If you're watching us later, I think there's 4 strains of something viral out there going. So stay healthy. Do all the things. Stay woke, awoke, however you like it. I'm talking about check the sources. Don't let them fake you out. And Trek well, everybody.